a Department of Retribution original. Cuck in a Corner series, Volume 1, Dan Bongina.
Yes, hello.
Why are you recording this call? Who is this, by the way?
Hi, this is Ivan Raiklin. You reached out to me via email, sir.
Oh yeah, hey Ivan, how are you, sir?
Good. For
Good.
your own protection. You know how I operate,
Hey,
Mr.
I hear
Rosen.
you, man. I don't blame you. Oh, here, 1 second, please. Here, give me a sec.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah. Sorry, I'm just getting back from kids drop off. Do you mind if I record too? Because I don't have my computer in front of me.
That's fine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for
No,
asking.
no, absolutely.
This call will be recorded.
But just you look at Bongino. He had just come back. I've had some interesting conversations with those who have basically been blocked by him, and I think the general sentiment is
So the whistleblowers, I guess. Kyle, Steve,
well, Kyle's one
O'Boyle.
of them, but these are actually just regular people who are on social media who engage with him and have certainly I would say that they definitely mirror a lot of what you've been saying online about him in terms of just the
So
way
your goal is to get the sentiment of those that have supported this administration, this president, as well as Dan Bongino over the course of probably at least the last decade, and how there's been a shift in, if you will,
well, not just that, but just and also the fact that he
perception
had
of
left
him.
to work for the he had left to work in the administration. It was very short lived. The investigations that he had worked, obviously, um, you know, they definitely they weren't well received,
If
and
if
now that he's
if
coming back
in the
to
interest of time, can I
yeah
go through the six that you asked, and then if you have any further questions, if you have the
yeah.
time to do that, I'll be happy to
Let's do it.
respond on any follow ups. Is that okay?
That's perfect. Let's do that. I appreciate
Okay,
that.
so you asked, in your mind, has Bongino maintained or lost credibility with those who once supported him, especially the America First base? And I would say unequivocally, absolutely yes. And I wrote a tweet about specifically the timeline. So if I was his boss, and I would look at the timeline of him entering on duty in March 17th, I believe it was. And then 2 months into it, there was already reporting, literally approximately 60 days into it, where he's essentially mentally checked out. The stress and what have you. Now, on
Mhm.
one side, from a personal perspective, he could say that, because I took the jab and that exacerbated his cancer. And that was a conscious decision that many of us saw when he made that decision, that was a total coward move to cave to what the entire established deep state order that he had been quote unquote fighting against in the court of public opinion. He still caved when it mattered, when it came to the vax. So that's a total cuck coward move. But we gave grace because we were excited that he was somebody that, yeah, that was one, yeah, that was somebody that would maybe pivot and change from his ways. But I guess the litmus test, I think, in everybody in this administration, and you're going to start seeing this amplify, those that had the courage to withstand the vaccine tyranny are going to be the only ones that are going to withstand the deep state because they already proved up. Those that bent the knee, up to and including the vice president, the president, have exhibited very limited zeal to push back against the very deep state that they're supposedly overseeing and on top of. So when 1 to 2 days into his, I don't know, do you have a lot of background noise?
Dude, I'm sorry. Here, let me mute. Let me mute.
All right, there you go. And so several days into the administration, when a administrator or the FBI deputy director or the FBI director comes in and doesn't day one, I think it was Scott Bessent. Very first thing he pretty much did was to bring in the whistleblowers that had proven up, withstood, and followed their oath. And when somebody does that, that means Scott has a Praetorian guard of eyes and ears to expose the corruption already within their organizations. Dan and Cash failed to do that. And so they actually even did worse than that. Dan was lauding this guy, Steve Jensen, who led the effort on behalf of, what we call the deep state. And I can go into detail on the names behind that. In order to protect their corruption and criminality, he elevated Steve Jensen to be the ADIC, assistant, director in charge over of the Washington field office. And he was the one leading the effort against the January 6 cases, which we all now have proven it was a Fedsurrection, right? It's not even debatable at this point. And so when we see moves like that and his infamousism, because he always seems to think that he's the smartest guy in the room, he's being handled completely by those that have been in the system for decades. So, and the only way that I saw that he would be successful in that position was to bring these specific whistleblowers. And strangely enough, coincidentally, all those whistleblowers that I just mentioned, as well as Steve, Garrett, Kyle, and Marcus Allen, and there's some other ones that are not public. All those are unvaccinated because they were critical thinkers from the beginning. And so we're going to be coming, and they would have been that Praetorian protection detail for a Cash, for a Dan Bongino, to be able to inform them at senior positions of what specifically was wrong with the organization, how the organization weaponized against its own internally, and how subsequently downstream from that, they weaponized against the entire totality of the American populace. Everybody, left, right, center, middle, up, down, etc. Because if they're willing to corruptly and criminally go after their own, nothing stops them from doing the same thing to destroy the constitutional order in America. And there's really no cultural change that is, from my perspective, that has really changed from 2014 onward. And so when you have that, and when you have those that are still in those positions, even though you have Dan and Cash at the top, effectively you have James Comey and Chris Wray still running that organization from their surrogates affiliates that they placed in those positions from when they were FBI directors. And it's like, remember, Chris Wray and James Comey, they weren't just plucked out as outsiders into the FBI. They were careerists that then later became the FBI directors. And the case, and so they have decades of networks that they've established to run circles around Dan and Cash. But yet Dan and Cash really didn't do anything about it. Next, I mean, if I can provide you that timeline, I guess it's a little bit more hyperbolic to get people's attention. But when you look at the timeline, 2 months into it, he checks out. Then he goes on Maria Bartiromo with Cash and effectively complains about how hard the position is. I mean, that also exudes cowardice. So if you want somebody to go to effectively war against the very criminals that he had spoken about on his podcast, and he fails, he just quits 2 months into it. That's an epic failure. And even more so, I wouldn't have been so vocal to call him out on this. But the very first thing he decided to do, coming out after quitting, remember, he mentally quit 2 months into it. And then 6 months into it, he had been contemplating that, oh, you know what, I can't deal with this, I'm going to quit. So essentially on the taxpayer dime, not really doing his job as the FBI deputy director. And we all see this. You can't hide it. He's the biggest platform, independent platform, etc. But he's not going to be able to hide from the truth. And there's enough of us critical thinkers on the outside that really have no desire to go into a government to perpetuate its corruption. We would rather on the outside continue to dismantle it from the outside with or without a compliant administration. So I think that probably answers fully question one. Two.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, kind of just sort of, what you were saying, did it seem like a losing proposition for Dan to even take this job in the first
No,
place?
because I offered the solution. So I get it. People will call me whatever name you want, but I always am critical, but I always provide a solution. The simplest solution to Dan, to Cash, to anybody in this government, if you want to fix it, the number one litmus test, hands down, on whether someone is going to work with you to dismantle the deep state, to just obliterate the deep state, to castrate the deep state, whatever you want to call it, is you have had to have proven. What's that?
Oh, sorry. You were kind of cutting in and out. I apologize, but you're saying I lost you when you were saying just the simple solution for Dan and Cash, and then you kind of
Yeah.
cut
The
out.
simple solution is an HR issue. And I've said this numerous times on many podcasts over the last year since they've gotten in power. You walk in, you immediately do the reversal of what happened during the Biden criminal syndicate reign of terror. You walk in and essentially say, all right, force, if you will, or FBI employees, tomorrow, if you got the jab, you will no longer have badge access. You cannot come to work. Those that did not, because the data, they created the database. So those that are unjabbed, critical thinkers, you can come back to work. Okay. And of those, the ones that were most vocal, meaning the whistleblowers, you then now are senior positions. You're at the senior most positions of my organization. Then those that are unjabbed, and there are not that many, you will now be elevated to the highest levels within the FBI headquarters, Washington field office, and the other 56 field offices, JTTFs, etc. That now puts people culturally in line with defending the Constitution and having the courage to withstand what took place during the Biden criminal syndicate reign of terror. You now have a cadre to then the following day say, all right, for those that don't have badge access, that took the jab, you now have to write a sworn, in order to come back to work, you write a sworn affidavit with two parts to it. One, you lay out every single person in the organization that compelled, coerced, duped you into taking the jab due to whatever reason that they provided, including all emails, communications, meetings, text messages, etc., with names and dates of the individuals that compelled you into that. On the flip side, on the second part, you list every single social media outlet, every media company that you relied on as an individual to convince yourself that these products were safe and effective. So now you have sworn affidavits that can then be utilized by leadership of this new leadership of the FBI or any other government agency to go ahead and administratively process that unlawful activity by the leadership of the organization to then start to process them out, pull security clearances, and then potentially civil litigation and criminal litigation against everyone that participated in that forced consumption of the DNA mutilation distribution products or the myocarditis making products in the case of J&J. Okay? That cleanses the system, and now you have cleansed the system out of those that are trying to undermine what this administration campaigned on. Full stop. I get it. 90% will probably be ejected. But it's better to have a ship or a boat with the captain and a few others on the team rowing in one direction rather than them with 90% of the ship where others are rowing in the opposite direction, trying to undermine and subvert it. That's the simplest solution. And it's an internal HR issue that can be done internally. Once you have the right people in place that have proved up, then you can do everything else and enforce everything else. And if those that are dismissed have a problem with it, they can by all means litigate it and litigate their way through trying to defend their position. Great. That's what I would say. That is the simplest solution for whether it's Bongino, Cash, or anybody in this government. Does that make sense?
Defense of Israel.
Yes, absolutely. If there's a pause, I have you on mute because I'm
Yeah,
trying
it's
to
fine.
in the background noise. So yeah.
So number two, did his decision to join the FBI fundamentally, you're missing a word there, public perception of Bongino. I think the word is change. Public perception is what you meant to write.
Yes, that's right.
And then if so, what were his most serious transgressions during his time in office? I think I laid it out that absolutely.
Yeah, you kind of, yeah.
I mean,
if
he
there's
did.
anything that
He basically came in as a quitter, right? He already mentally checked out. Just weak, right? So if so, what were his most serious transgressions during his time in office? Number one, he complained when you're in charge, you take charge. You lead. You do not exhibit at every opportunity weakness, cowardice, as well as, oh, this is too hard. Oh, I have to work more than 8 hours a day. No, you don't do that. And especially you don't do that publicly. Number two, you don't go into that position and pound your chest and say, oh, look at me. I'm the FBI deputy director. I get all this access and everyone loves me. So, unfortunately, with all of us, your ego gets in the way of exactly what the mission is. Okay. So, that's number two. Number three, will Bongino be able to replicate the success and audience he once enjoyed pre FBI? Or has his time at the FBI made that impossible in today's new media climate? So, there's a couple nuanced components here. There's the tactical, his ability to produce content, and then there's the strategic relationships that he has. So based on tweets recently by Chris Pavlovsky and him being I think Dan is still a big investor in Rumble. I mean, that's his platform of choice. Now, I thank Dan for creating and help creating that platform of free speech that got us to the position that we're in for me to be able to exercise my First Amendment maximally on that platform as well as X. So I don't discount that. But his relationship with Chris Pavlovsky and his call to arms of I'm declaring war against those critical of me, that could start to extend into a censorship campaign. Now I get it. He's now a private citizen, right? And Chris Pavlovsky is a private citizen in a private company. They can decide on their own that, you know what, we're going to go ahead and censor folks. Now they can do that, but the counterbalance to that is when that starts to happen, we start to see it. There's enough of us independent with enough of a voice that can counter that. We're going to immediately move off of that platform. We will bankrupt that platform just like we started to have a massive financial impact on Facebook, Instagram, Meta, all those, as we started to go to other platforms that allowed us to speak the truth, whether it's Telegram, whether it's locals, you name it, Getter, etc., Substack. So the information is going to get out. So maybe that's the strategy, is that this administration asked him to say, you know what, we're losing the narrative. There are a lot of independent voices out there that are much more intellectual and much more articulate than the disinformation purveyors or protectors of the regime. And so we need somebody with a big audience like Dan Bongino to go out and leverage that platform to counterbalance and only focus on the positive things that this administration has done. Meanwhile, they don't understand yet. Well, they probably understand, but they don't want to do it. The number one reason why this president was elected is because people wanted accountability for criminality. Number one, call it what you will: accountability, justice, retribution, punishment for criminal, unlawful acts. And if they're not going to do it, they're going to be stuck in this pincer position of, on the left, they've already been duped and convinced that they can commit violence at all scales and levels against this administration because this administration will not do anything to them. Meaning, when James Comey, who runs the FBI, I argue still, puts out his H.647 and nothing happens to him, and they only go after him for contempt of Congress or 1001 violations, and those are dismissed within weeks, the left sees this administration as being fully incompetent, pathetic, and they can run roughshod over them. And that's why you're seeing these massive, violent, escalatory activities from the left. Number one, the attempted assassinations of Trump. Number two, Charlie Kirk. I mean, Charlie Kirk's slaughter in broad daylight was after James Comey called on the A647 and nothing happened to him. So when this admin does nothing and says, oh, look at the petty crimes we've gone after that local law enforcement has done, but yet the FBI director is going to claim responsibility for those arrests and that activity. No, has nothing to do with it. There's enough of us former insiders that are just sick of the entire system of lies, corruption, that we're going to continue to call it out. And we don't have loyalty to an admin, to a candidate that we supported. We have loyalty to the truth. And when there's a direct conflict, we will side with the truth. And we're not going to side with those because we don't have foreign donors that are telling us what to do. We don't have the Miriam Adelsons directing what we can and can't say, the biggest donor in Republican circles, right? And same thing, you're going to start seeing alignment with those that are traditionally ideologically on the left that are independent thought leaders that are going to call it out as well. So you're going to see this massive realignment that is going to expose the corruption on both sides. Those align with Miriam Adelson and those align with George Soros. And I'll pause there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what's an interesting point is, as you're talking about Rumble, like effectively the lifeblood are guys like Alex Jones, Seraphin, he's obviously he's growing in profile over there.
Yeah.
All these platforms that you as I would imagine it's safe to say these are the critical thinkers that you would group them into. If you leave that platform, that definitely is going to impact them probably a lot more acutely than it would be if
Right. So if
you guys were just you guys had left Facebook or you left. I'm saying, like, in the hypothetical of you guys leaving Rumble, I mean, that would be financially, that would have a considerably strong financial impact on it.
I mean, let's
Probably more
just
so than any other platform.
right. So if Chris Pavlovsky makes a business decision because of coercion by this administration through Dan Bongino to go ahead and, you know what, why don't you deboost Ivan? And I don't have a big platform, but I go on very big platforms. Whether it's, I mean, you name it. So Myron Games, Fresh and Fit, big channel. Viva Frey, big channel. Redacted, big channel. I mean, I can name you the probably. I've been on most of the top 10, 20 channels other than Bongino, right? And so in the collective, he's got to make a business decision. Is he going to even entertain slightly a censorship? Because I can guarantee you, as soon as one of those content creators feels even a misinterpretation that there's censorship, they're going to immediately go on platform or other platform and say that. And now everybody's spidey senses are going to be up. And not like just, even if you publish this, everyone's going to be micro scrutinizing. If there's even so much as a molecule shift in distribution, we're just going to go off platform. Because it's unacceptable. That's what we fought. We fought for free speech. And I honestly think that the pressure is going to be there. But I also think that based on Pavlovsky's past work performance, I think he will not cave. And so we're going to continue to see some sort of this kind of civil war brewing within, what they're trying to call, like, within the America First versus MAGA, etc. But the more and more people speak, more people are going to be educated at scale that, and this is even in President Trump's own words, most Americans that are not tied to the political ecosystem find it repulsive, absolutely repulsive, that someone with more allegiance to another country purchased this White House, purchased one of the political parties. Okay? And I'm talking about Miriam Adelson. And so as that comes out further and her ties and relationships to Susie Wiles, Jared Kushner, Bibi Netanyahu, Chris LaCivita, and the money flows, I mean, it's all evident if you actually do research. But most of America and most people that vote Republican, they don't know that. But because we're at scale putting out content on some of these independent platforms, more and more people see that. And I think it's going to have a massive impact going into the primaries. And we're starting to see that with Tucker interviewing Fishback. I mean, starting to, trickle out breadcrumbs of, you hear the name Miriam Adelson mentioned more and more, especially when over the last several months, and I'm going to get to that point here, last couple months, you had President Trump in Israel calling out Miriam Adelson, saying that she is more loyal to Israel than the United States. A couple months later, she's in the White House. He brings her up on stage right after Mark Levin says that this is the first first Jewish president in American history, followed by Miriam Adelson thanking her for dropping $250 million to his campaign. And Alan Dershowitz supposedly explained to her a legal strategy that he can run in 2028. and she's going to give him potentially another $250 million plus. When people see that are just not really in tune with the financing of campaigns, I would say that most of American society is repulsed that is even taking place, and specifically those that campaigned, donated, fundraised, knocked doors, and supported this president, that voted 6 times for him in the primary elections and in the general elections. And I'm one of those. It has nothing, it's agnostic completely to anybody's religion. It's a secular argument of we do not want someone that has more loyalties to a nation other than the United States to completely control our government. Does that make sense?
Yes. And so you've given me almost 30 minutes of your time. One last
Yeah.
question. So,
No, I'm happy to
yeah,
do this as long as
yeah.
it's good faith, transparent, and then we record each other.
Yeah,
That way we keep professional.
absolutely. Because, like for me, the other interesting thing is like, for Dan, I keep thinking about, in terms of like when you're a media figure and you're thinking about the brand and where you stand and, being in terms of him being a critical thinker prior to joining the ministry, the FBI now, in your mind, is that has he lost that? Is it sort of now unreclaimable, or can he,
So
at
yeah,
some point come back to the same way you perhaps used to view him prior to this?
so I've yeah, just for context, I mean, I've known Dan not closely, but we cross paths at CPAC, different events. I mean, when you go to these events, you're crossing paths a lot, right? I've been on a show once before during the RNC convention in July of 2020, last year, 2024. And I appreciate his work. I appreciate his research and deep dive into the system. But when it meant the most, effectively nothing happened. And his response is, oh, you don't know half of it. You don't know anything. Well, guess what? The very first thing you could have talked about, Dan, would have been, instead of saying, I'm declaring war against black pillars, and we know exactly what that means. That's those critical of inaction, okay? To include your inaction. And so if that's the very first thing you do, that doesn't work. Like, he cannot, even though he has a bigger platform, you can't bully us, right? When you bully somebody like me, like I will accept mutually assured destruction before accepting defeat. Worst case scenario. But I will always strive to defeat you with the truth and exposure. So what does that mean? I mean, he could have gone out and said, you know what? I'm going to come out and explain all the great work we've done and what things that we could have actually accomplished that I wasn't able to, and explain why that was the case so that we improve from, he could genuinely say, I tried my best. This is what I was able to do. And so this is how we increase and improve. He didn't do that. He immediately declared war at a time when we demanded that he declare war against the deep state. And the deep state, and when I say deep state, I mean, Cash calls it the government gangster list. Dan's got a list. I mean, I probably have the most exhaustive list of those that I have evidence for for criminality within our entire deep state apparatus to the tune of about 1,500 people. I mean, you can just start with those in the government gangster list. But no, he can't even fire, like, he elevated these people like the Steve Jensens. So I mean, it's disgusting. And between the whistleblowers and those that are former insiders, like U.S. government interagency wide, like myself, that still follow the rules of, but I just exercise my First Amendment critically. Like, the reason why I have a massive voice, because just like Dave Smith said, I want to quote this. This is a brilliant quote by Dave Smith. Truth is currency right now. And it doesn't matter. Like, we could care less about an R by your name, a D by your name. If you're bullshitting us, we're going to call you out. And if you don't back down, okay, you declared the war. We will end it. Okay. We will end this war. And it's probably better for Dan Bongino to surrender, because if he doesn't surrender, we're going to drag him through the mud, because we haven't even gotten into addressing his transgressions that I have evidence of. And I'm not going there yet, but I'm going to give him an opportunity to go ahead and save face and back off. Because if he doesn't, the financial reasons why he's doing this is one thing, but his reputation is going to be obliterated. Because I have dirt on everybody in this town, sir.
I think that's a great quote to end on. No, but like I think at the end of the day, it's sort of like, for me, I guess for Dan, it's sort of like damned if you do, damned if you don't. When you get the call to serve the administration, in his mind, what he's
Yeah, but
talking
that's
about,
not
I
the
was using his platform, but
that
yeah.
wasn't the problematic part. You call and
Hmm.
serve and you do your best and you do it as best you can. And the messaging should be, it should be authentic. And I get it. When you come in, you support the president, you support the administration. One of the reasons why hey guys, I mean, I personally was asked to serve in the administration. I said, you know what? I'm not going to do it full time, but I'm accessible to provide any inside advice. I mean, I could do what Elon did as an SGE. That might be the most appropriate because what the value that I can bring is very surgical and very specific and short duration and impactful because of the research that I've done. And I'm always available. But I also always need to have an independent ability to call balls and strikes. To me, that's paramount, whether you're a Democrat or Republican administration. And I think more and more people see that it's necessary for our country to flourish. Because if one side it's like you go from one sided corruption to another sided corruption, and it's just a perpetual cycle. Like I don't need that. I want to be able to look my grandkids in the eye and say, you know what? Here's what I did. I fought for the truth, and we were able to keep the government within the guardrails that we set forth in our Constitution. But without accountability, you can't do that. And so Dan didn't provide any accountability. He actually operated in reverse, and we all see that. And I guess he'll keep his lower IQ, if you will, uncritical, not as, we're nerds in the system. So we follow it day in and day out. You have sources that I don't. I probably have tons of sources that you don't to be able to help shape everything. And so the currency is truth. And right now, no one buys into Dan's war. And those that do, it's very clear that they're receiving some sort of remuneration, whether it's through access or financial gain. And I've already it's easy to put the network together once you start seeing people's commentary. And when you block someone, you're hiding something. And that's the most cuck move to do. Insta block. So if he wants to block us and doesn't want to hear critical thought, we have no business in just hearing complaints. That's because that's all he basically did.
Mhm.
And I gave a speech on Sunday in Ronkonkoma, New York,
Mhm. Mhm.
on Sunday that really addresses it in detail. But to summarize, he's weak, he's cowardly. James Comey still and Chris Wray still run the FBI, ran circles around and pushed Dan out, and then Miriam Adelson's administration through Susie Wiles is trying to save face by leverage and respond to the critical thought that has really infused the national conversation while Dan's been absent, and they think that they can just send him back to quell what they call the rebellion. Susie Wiles doesn't understand the independent thought game as well as she thinks. And
Mhm.
the reason why I'm doing this, years ago, I would have never taken this call or made this call. But now that we're taking over the free speech narrative and you guys are kind of forced to have a more balanced reporting process, and obviously I'm recording this,
Mhm.
the truth's going to come out.
Mhm.
And even if Susie Wiles is maybe legally operating by filing her FARA registrations and filing the lobbyist forms, okay, it may be legal, and this DOJ won't prosecute any of that. When the American public sees the pay for play scheme, that kind of looks as though it's a love child of Mike Pence and Hunter Biden pay for play scheme so that Susie can make decisions, foreign policy decisions that benefit Ballard Partners, Mercury, and her two daughters and her
All this theory
ecosystem.
about Israel,
We don't like it.
defense of Israel.
And therein lies the problem. You have a foreign first captured financially administration that is that operates at the direction of Miriam Adelson. And on the other side, you have 79, 80 million of us that want nothing to do with that voted for him. And that's why you have a civil war. And Dan Bongino has been deployed on that. The former, the Miriam Adelson, Susie Wiles, Chris Lasavita crowd to maintain there. And oh, by the way, another person I'm going to have to drop the name for the first time is oh man, what's his name? Tall guy, Sasquatch. He works out of Israel. They just started deploying him.
Brad
Parscale.
Brad, yeah, Parscale. That's
I
right.
mean, I hate saying these things because I pretty much know. I know some of these people, known them for a while. It doesn't benefit me to tell the truth. It harms me if people are like, hey, you're never going to get access to the White House. I'm like, okay, if I wanted access to the White House, I wouldn't say these things. But I don't really I'm not in that place in life. I'm just trying to fix the shit show.
Stuff. Ivan,
Shit. Thanks for
you
staying
gave
with
me
me.
almost damn near 40 minutes of your time. I appreciate that.
I always do long form, so
yeah. I got my work cut out for me right now. But I appreciate you doing this. And this is your cell, right?
yeah, this is my cell.
Okay.
You can
All
reach
right,
back
awesome.
out to me if you have any further questions. I mean, this is
Definitely.
just a superficial response, which is probably more than most people give you, but I
Sure.
operate in very in-depth analysis.
Mhm.
I'll do 2,
No, but
3, 6-hour interviews.
Yeah. Well, you
Yeah.
got better stamina than I do. In any case, but yeah.
And you're with the Sun based
The
out
New
of
York
where?
Sun, New York City.
Okay. I guess that's like more right leaning.
Yeah, it's always been like middle of the road. It's it and they've I'm trying to think, I cover the FBI. I mean, I don't really sway one way or the other.
No,
But
it's just, we see the
yeah.
America First critical thinkers see the FBI as a corrupt institution, and absent
Mhm.
complete, bold, aggressive action to wipe out the corrupt players, there's it's almost as though America needs to block not Dan Bongino only, but the entire FBI. Like we need to block them from existence because of their past performance. It's despicable. It's unacceptable. The institution's behavior.
Isn't it funny how quickly the Epstein files ceased to matter to me?
All right, pal.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Isn't it funny?
But
how
if
quickly
you want to
the
ask a
Epstein
question, how do we
files
fix
ceased to
it?
matter to me?
I mean, there need to be. I call on mass demonstrations, First Amendment demonstrations, demanding accountability, deep state arrests at scale, mass arrests,
Mhm.
and you can do that over at the Department of Justice on Pennsylvania Avenue and across the street at the FBI headquarters.
Mhm.
Lawful, peaceful First Amendment, and essentially shining maximum light. There should be live streamers monitoring everyone walking in and out of that building 24/7, and then researching them until you find, like they do to us, find the man, I find you the crime. I want everybody to scrutinize every single employee of the DOJ and the FBI until you find a transgression, and then you put them on blast so that they cannot walk anywhere without their neighbors or anybody else knowing the transgressions they committed against our country until they resign, remove, or are prosecuted. That's a good idea. I might just do that myself.
I think we'll end it on that note.
All
Good stuff.
right.
All right. All right. Good to meet you, man. I
All
appreciate
right,
it. Ivan.
Dan, Mr. Rosen.
All right.
Good talking.
We'll talk soon.
See ya.
A Department of Retribution original. Cuck in a Corner series. Volume 1. Dan Bongina.